When we started playing, we were really broke. Basically, my entire 20s, I never had any money. So if someone was going to give me free beers, I was going to drink them. Who would I be to turn that down, you know? I'd almost hear my dad in my ear be like, don't waste it.
Thank you so much for chatting to me today, Josh. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'll get just right into it. So, exciting times in Northland Camp. It's been, I believe, over 3 years since your last regional tour. What made now the right time to head back to the places that don't always get those big shows?
It's always just a matter of timing for us. A band like Northlane that tours around the world, we have to find time to squeeze everything in. And touring regional Australia has to be away from whenever we do the big cities. So that's why this kind of time frame was looking best for us. And it sits right between us hitting European summer festivals, which we just did, going to Asia, which we're about to do, and then headed to the US straight afterwards. So we just kind of jammed it in and did as many weekends as we could before we head overseas again. Always would have liked to have done more because there's a few spots that we're not hitting on this particular run that we've hit before, such as Tasmania and Cairns and um, even some spots in regional South Australia. But we did do Tasmania on a random weekend last year, so we try and keep everyone happy as much as we can.
Yeah, totally fair. I don't know if this is true, but do you find that there's a difference in energy between a regional Northland show and a capital city one? I guess if so, what's the difference there?
There absolutely is a difference in energy. The crowds at the regional shows are always far more intoxicated and far more excited about us playing for them because I think a lot of these towns, like they won't get very many shows in a year compared to capital cities where people are a bit spoilt for choice. So, they make a real night of it and they go all in, and it's always so much fun. Like even if it's a far smaller crowd than what we would play to in a place like Melbourne, it's always the intensity will make up for it, and we'll always have a good time.
Yeah, totally. Do you have any kind of core memories from a past regional show that sort of stick with you or anything fun that's happened on a regional tour?
So many. The drunkest crowd I ever played to was in Wagga, and and it was just nuts. And we've had things happen like barriers collapse, stages collapse, PAs break. I don't even know where to start. One time we played in a surf shop in like near Wollongong, because the venue that we were meant to play at cancelled the show and somebody jumped off a balcony. It's always pretty wild.
Yeah, I feel like those regional towns do get pretty loose. The idea of you guys playing in
Yeah.
a surf shop is pretty sick though. Sick though.
So the surf shop, yeah,
Yeah.
that was something that just got thrown together last minute. It was pretty cool.
I feel like
I think
sometimes those sort of last minute things seem to go really well though. It's like you don't expect it.
yeah,
It just comes together perfectly.
everyone's just happy to be there.
Yeah, for sure. Now, jumping to a bit less regional. So, as you've mentioned, you've come off some of Europe's biggest festivals, and then you've got Asia, US, you're coming back to Australia after that. Do you have to recalibrate your mindset for a run like this, where you're sort of all over these different places?
No, there's no recalibration for me because I wear many hats. So I manage the bands. I run an artist management company as well. I release the band's records. And between all of that, I've raced Ironman triathlons. So I just never stop, and there is no recalibration for me. I mean, I spent 16 hours at my desk the day after I landed back from Europe, and the day after that, I got a epidural injection in my spine. So like for me, there's just never any stopping. Like I just have to live like that. I'm lucky that my wife was really patient and likes her own space. Every touring situation's different. You know, when we do these regional shows, we're going to be getting around in like a people mover and staying in hotels every night. So might not get the same sleep we would on a like a nightliner bus in Europe and the US, but you just make do with the situation at hand. And at the end of the day, we're all just happy to still be doing this after so many years and grateful that it's turned into a career for us.
Oh, for sure. And you mentioned doing triathlons. So this is something I actually really wanted to ask you. So, you've got Northlane, you're managing the band, you've got these triathlons. What does your training actually look like between shows or during travel days? I'd love to know how you kind of manage that.
When I'm touring, I just do what the best I can. And sometimes the best I can do is to just sleep more and not worry about it and just get on a foam roller at the venue and make sure that my body's moving and responding well. Bare minimum, I like to get out for a quick run before I hit the stage. Actually seems to help me get through the show, and I wake up the next day not feeling as sore, which is interesting. But I'll make the most of the days off and go for long runs. Or in the US, I have a stationary bike on the bus that I'll use to train with and some weight training equipment. I'll get to gyms here and there. I'll take my swimmers and go swimming depending on where in the world we are. Yeah, it's really whatever I can manage, whatever I can fit in, but I just have to listen to my body as well and remember that I'm there to play music, not to train.
Definitely. I feel like it would be tricky sometimes to balance, like, oh, I want to train, but also, you've got this big show.
It just kind of helps me stay on a good path though, and not party all night like I used to.
You're not the first artist that's told me that. I certainly don't
Yeah,
think you'll be the last.
it seems to be a common thread.
100%. A lot of it is artists who've been touring for like at least 5+ years that have kind of made that realization that maybe partying all night isn't quite the best way to keep going.
Yeah, it's a funny thing because at first, like when we started playing, we were really broke for a very long time. Like basically my entire 20s, I never had any money. So if someone was gonna give me free beers, I was gonna drink them. Like, who would I be to turn that down, you know? I'd almost hear my dad in my ear be like, "Don't waste it." And then, as you get older, you're like, oh, maybe that's not very good for you. And, we actually can change the rider and put healthy stuff on it, and we don't have to drink beers every night. So, yeah.
Well, you've learned it now. And I know like a lot of other artists obviously do talk about staying healthy on tour, some probably to a lesser extent than, training where they can. A few
Yeah.
back it up with triathlons afterwards, but I'd love to know, and I guess this maybe kind of leads into what you've already said, but what's the why behind your fitness regime and why you do the triathlons? Like I guess, where's the passion
Well,
come from?
I was a child athlete before I was a musician. So basically, like the whole time I was in high school, I was an elite swimmer and I would swim 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours after school, go to the gym 4 or 5 days a week. Like I grew up doing that and it's just kind of ingrained in me. I was always doing other stuff here and there. I fell out of love with swimming, got into triathlon, and then walked away from that in my late teens, early 20s because I got really interested in music and that was kind of all I cared about, and had a bit of a mental health crisis at the time, and I had to put, my athletic pursuits on hold and just like find joy in other elements of my life, because I've just been going full throttle basically since I was physically able to. Yeah, just tried to stay fit and healthy, but definitely slid in my 20s. And then when COVID happened, that's kind of coincided with me falling back in love with cycling, which is one element of triathlon. It's something that I always loved doing. Coincided with me moving to Melbourne, finding out it was easy to get around on a bike, and then that just spiraled out of control into me riding hundreds of kilometers a week for fun when I wasn't on tour. And I started doing cycling competitively at a local level, and was just really put off by all of the crashes and how dangerous it was. But what I did really want was goals to work towards, because the goals would, like, for me, training's not about having motivation or not, it's about like discipline and kind of how it sets up the rest of my life. So I kind of need goals that I'm working towards in order to stay disciplined, because then it's kind of like I'm not really working towards anything. It's hard for me to just do stuff for enjoyment for some reason. So having the races that I enter, in the back of my mind just makes me go, oh, I probably should stick to the plan I'm on and probably should make the right decisions. So that's why I like to do them. And then, when I go on race, it's like a internal process as well because you're kind of finding new limits and you walk away from it learning a bit about yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Now, I'd love to jump into Northlane's music a bit more. So, as a band, you guys have never really stayed still. So, like from Singularity to Mirror's Edge, every release has kind of pushed those boundaries. What keeps that innovation instinct alive for you personally?
It's an interesting question for me because I'm not always like deeply involved in the songwriting. I kind of like come and go from that perspective. There's some albums I was really involved in and others where I just kind of sat back because I guess I play another role in the band too. But I think the innovation really comes from John. I think he's always looking for something new when he writes. So every single release, he has to find a new source of inspiration within himself, that makes him motivated to write a release that he thinks is worthy, because he would not be happy doing the same thing twice. So he's really the main driver of that. And in fact, at times I feel like I almost hold him back a bit because he kind of pushes too far. Really, it's all him. And for me, it's inspiring to be in a band with somebody like that because he is such an innovator.
For sure. And I suppose I don't know how much you can talk to this, and you've kind of mentioned it, but is there ever like a large tension between kind of that progression and innovating and keeping what fans love and kind of preserving, I guess, previous sounds, or does that not come into it too much?
It doesn't really come into it. The band's never written music for the fans, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
Like, that's why the rule book gets ripped up every release. Because if we did that, like, we never would have written Singularity because at that point in time, we didn't really have a huge fan base. It was just starting to catch on, but that was a left step from Discoveries. Node was a complete departure from the last two records, and then probably the album that was our biggest landmark was Alien. There is no way that would have come about if we were worried about what people would have thought, because that album was a huge innovation in terms of sound. It's not something we ever think about, to be honest. I guess that there might be elements of it, but it's never forced onto creative decisions because then the music would become inauthentic. So I think people will always connect with authentic music, but if an artist is specifically writing it to cater to a certain demographic or, their fan base explicitly, it's always really obvious to me as a listener. And I would always want our fan base to be excited for a Northlane release because they know it may challenge them and they know it's going to be different, rather than them just expecting the same thing.
100%. I've got one more question for you before I let you go. You guys have won awards, toured globally, broken boundaries. Northlane's really done it all. What do you still want the band to do or say with future music? Do you kind of have any goals in mind, things like that?
Wow, that's actually a really hard question because I never think of it so literally, but I think we have goals in terms of growth and the kind of live production that we want to be able to do around the world. And that would kind of come with increasing the band's listenership. But I think, to do that is a huge challenge in itself. So um, we just want to keep doing what we're doing and release music that we're happy with. And if we challenge ourselves every single time, then we'll continue to grow.
Perfect.